Hey everybody, looks like we made it to yet another Wednesday. Thank you so much for hanging out. So glad to see you. So glad that you're here on this Wednesday night with me. So I appreciate you very, very much. And let's see who we have today. We have Patty all the way from Illinois. We have Mr. Roy Color Graphics all the way from New Jersey, just down the turnpike a ways, about maybe 2 hours from me. So fellow Jersey guy, so good to see you. So today we are working on part 5 of this expressive portrait, you know, putting emotion in there, everything like that, very important. So Roy and Patty, if you get a chance, let me know how the sound quality is, picture quality, all that stuff. Just gonna move this over, so hopefully the sound is good. Let's see. So everything. Hey, Mr. Dwayne Marshall, all the way from Central California. Great to see you. So glad you're here. Go Mustangs, right? So Patty says the sound is good. The picture quality, how's that? Is that good as well, I hope? And everything's great. Thanks, Roy. Thanks for the vote of confidence there. So I have my ink flinger glove. Mr. Michael, how are you? Great to see you, sir. Thank you so much for coming out. Michael, you are from Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. And Pam, how are you, Pam? Great to see you from Virginia. So fantastic. And thanks, Mike, that it looks and sounds great. Thanks for that feedback, sir. You guys are my eyes and ears when it comes to this live stream stuff. So I appreciate that. And so great. And all's good there, Dwayne says. And go Mustangs. Yes, not the banana slugs. You know, that doesn't sound menacing as a school mascot. Oh no, here come the banana slugs. It just doesn't have an impact, you know. But so cool that Dwayne is here, Mr. Mike's is here, all the way from Maryland, and also Pam's here from the great state of Virginia. Okay, so let me talk about some of the good plans that are coming up. So it's almost like I've been getting you guys ready with color. So I am going, this is going to be this live stream. This one's going to be in black and white, of course. Oh, thank you, Pam. Well, it's easy to remember good people like yourself. And I'm actually going to be moving into color on the live stream. But let's look at it this way. This is a great setup for you all because now you know what makes a really good underpainting. So that's what this is. Could be like a perfect underpainting to go ahead and work in color. So when this portrait is done, which probably will be in about the next 2 or 3 weeks, then we are going to start working in color, and I'm going to be working with the golden paints. Hey honey, how are you? Great to see you all the way from Rockville Center, Long Island, New York. So glad you're here. So that is so cool. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on a Wednesday. It really means a lot to me. And so definitely we're working in color. Let me show you the paints. So I like working in golden, and what I'll do is I'll take their fluid acrylics and I'll add medium to it so it's sprayable to go through the airbrush, and I like to work on top of a black and white underpainting. So that's going to be very different. It's going to be a milestone, and I'm so excited that you all are going to be here with me as I do that and transition on over to color. Now I'll still do my black and white live streams, but we may alternate with color. So that's something to look forward to. So very exciting. So remember, as I start working in first time of the day, I always like working with the detail mixture. Just like a baseball pitcher, you know, when he warms up, he doesn't face the pitchers right away. He warms up in the bullpen, and then he even warms up about 10 pitches on the mound before he sees live pitching. Same with you. When you wake up in the morning and you sit down to airbrush, I would hate to think you would just go right into the detail. You have to get warmed up. Colette, how are you? All the way from the great state of Wisconsin. How are you? So glad you're here. So we have a great Midwest coalition going on right now, which I love. Love the Midwest. Okay, so 5 drops of the detail mixture and 5 drops of water. So I'm going to go get my water. I'll be right back. And 5 drops of the water. Here we go. Always do this far away from your painting. Okay, there we go. I'll use the dropper as a mixer. Go. Maybe just a little bit more for good luck. Okay, so not quite sure that's mixed up just so. So always err on the side of caution. Put this aside. Get my top. And now, before we actually go into the work, what we want to do is go ahead and test it. Make sure the airbrush is working, everything is tight. It's a little too thin, so I'm just going to add a little bit more detail mixture. You don't want it to the point where it's like ridiculously thin, right? So there's a lot of calibration involved with this. It takes time, but it's time well spent. You wouldn't want to be spraying with too light of an ink mixture. You definitely wouldn't. Not when you're warming up, right? You don't want to go too far. You can always go too far. Okay. And let's get my glasses and we'll start. And oh, thank you. Colette says she loves the painting. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And now it's always good to go down the, I like to go down the center line when I start. Always good to do. There we go. And now I gotta bring up my Pure Ref. Pure Ref, if you don't have it, please download that program if you work from your images on the computer. It really is second to none. It will make you so happy. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to work on the center line and see where we can just do some little detail here and there. Nothing too big in the beginning. Okay. Like I said, you know, when you first start, you want to calibrate your airbrush. Like I said, this is the first airbrushing I did all day. I've been doing oil painting today. Now we're cooking with gas. Okay, so let's zoom in with the power of the DSLR. We'll zoom in on the eyes. And move this over just a tad. There we are. And let's see if I can focus just a bit better for you all. Okay, great. And all right, so now we'll just start working on her eye on camera right. And you notice I'm pumping that trigger, which is always important. And I talk a lot about compressed values, meaning that you don't want the values to be too far away from each other. I know as our instincts we want everything to be defined, but if those values are closer together, like in this iris to the pupil, then I need to do that. So that's what I'm working on now. And oh, Michael says this young lady painting got the looks between Angela Jolie and Raquel Welch. So true. Yeah, I didn't notice that. Definitely. She has definitely, I can definitely see Raquel Welch in her eyes. Very good, Mike. That's very true. Both amazing women. And I definitely see Angelina Jolie in the cheekbones, right? Definitely. When you're working with the airbrush and the India inks correctly, it almost feels like watercolor. And that's how it should feel. It should feel like you're working on wet paint. You know, that's what you really want to have, that feeling. And so that's something. Oh yeah, the lips, definitely Angelina Jolie lips, right? I agree 100%. Right in the corner, it's a little bit on the dark side, so I'm just going to hit this. Just intensify that dark right there. And okay, and then we'll just, now notice one thing I'm doing is that I'm painting at an angle. I'm not straight up and down. And sometimes it's great, you know, like when you're doing stencils, working on stencils straight up and down, that will keep from underspray. But when you're freehanding, and I like going at an angle only for the sole reason that it you can see what you're doing better, and there's less underspray, overspray, because you're at an oblique angle. There's more room for that ink to spread rather than spider, right? So, but yeah, definitely when I'm doing stencils, right? When I'm doing stenciling, you know, and if always straight up and down is perfect, because as Mr. Leahy said on Monday, you don't get any underspray or anything like that, and you get sharp. But for freehand, I like to always be at an angle, and that helps to kind of lessen the whole idea of spidering and stuff like that. Now, I'm always going to err on the side of, you know, let's see what the other values are doing before I lighten them. So now I'm just going to darken some values along here, which is the nasal bones right here, and going up into her forehead, which is the corrugated supercilii muscle right here. And when you're looking for the anatomy, you'll find it. If you're not looking for it, you still may find it, but you won't realize how you got there. Meaning that you can get away with it just by pure observation, but I would rather have that cognition, you know, of really understanding what it is I'm painting, and that's important. Oh, Honey said that she thought it was Angelina Jolie. Oh, she's so beautiful, isn't she, guys? Such a pretty lady. And like the first couple of minutes, you know, up until an hour, is just reintroducing myself to the painting. I always love that one, oh, thank you. So Patty says, don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you for that. And so remember the Honeymooners episode where Norton was reading the book on how to play golf, and I think Ralph goes to Ed Norton. He says, "It says you have to address the ball," and Ed Norton goes, "Hello, ball," and that's funny. So when you address yourself to the painting, just go, "Hello, painting," like Ed Norton. Art Connie was great, wasn't he? That whole cast was just magic. And just, so that's why you want to work light. So, why are you so like, oh, I want to work from light to dark in airbrush? Not in all mediums, but in airbrush you want to work from light to dark. Now why? Because there's a lot of things such as blue shift you have to worry about and stuff like that, and you definitely want to work from light to dark, so this way you can put in your really strong lights and then gradually get dark, because there's no problem going darker, but there are problems in airbrush going lighter. Now, also, in airbrush you have less opportunity to get texture, so you have to build that texture up, right? And working from light to dark, you can really build that texture up. So those are two reasons why you want to go from light to dark using the airbrush. And right here we can see it's darker underneath the hair here. And when we're working like this, we are under the philosophy that we don't care how long it takes. It's not a commission, and if it's a commission, you have to give yourself more time so you don't have to rush it. Rushing it is never good. I mean, sometimes you get away with it, but it would always be better if you weren't rushing. What beautiful control you get with the Extreme Patriot Arrow. Really is great. Oh, Michael says he likes when Jim from Taxi is taking the driving test, and when he paints a car picture, I think what he does, a yellow light. So when he paints a car picture, I think of that. What does a yellow light mean? That is funny. He was great in Taxi, wasn't he? He was really great. What does the yellow light mean? Oh, yes, and I remember that now. And then I think not Riga, but the actor, the character, he says, slow down. He's like, sorry, what does the yellow light mean? And he says, no, slow down. Keep slowing down. Now I know the exact scene, Mike. That's really rich. I love that. I was a prisoner of a television when I was a kid, and I used to watch all those shows. Especially, that was the Tuesday night lineup, I think, with Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, Taxi, and then there was something at 10 o'clock, but I had to go to bed. But I think Taxi was 9:30, and I think Mork and Mindy was originally on Tuesdays, and then they moved him over to. Oh no, you're right. I'm wrong. It was Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Three's Company, Taxi. That's how it worked. And Mork and Mindy was 8 o'clock on Thursday. Why I have this in my brain, I don't know. But let me know if you guys remember those shows on Tuesday when we were kids. And notice how I'm just very lightly with this detail mixture, just pumping that trigger and painting little dots. And it gets lighter as we go further out. So all I do, let the airbrush do it for you, right? Let the airbrush make it happen. So what I like to do is when I want it lighter, I just go further away. And as I'm going out, I'll get this beautiful gradation, which is really great. Oh, After Taxi was Wings. That's true. Thanks for that, sir. That's very cool. Yeah, I remember Wings. That was a good show. Yeah, Tuesday night was really good on NBC. No, that was ABC. NBC came later with like their shows, which were really good, but that was ABC. Okay, now this part here inside there is dry, even though I just sprayed right there. So I just got a refill on the Mono. If you haven't gotten this, please get it. The Mono Zero. It is the most amazing. It's an ultra-fine 2.3 millimeter. You can get it at Amazon. You get it at Blick. It's really amazing. Highly recommend it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lighten up here. Lighten up, Tim. Wouldn't be the first time I was told that. Just come right over here like this. There we go. So there's this retroapicularis oris, the retroapicularis oculi fat pad that's right here, and we really have to make that stand out because this is coming forward like drastically more than where the eye is in the eye socket. So our job is to make sure that we portray that, because without it, that's where the likeness will be lost, because you're not paying attention to her particular anatomy. She has a general human anatomy, but then we all have a particular anatomy, and that could be the size of her retroapicularis oculi fat. Oh, yeah, so Pam says when she was little she wasn't allowed to watch Three's Company. I can understand that because a lot of it was like sexual innuendo, right? Uh, and I could understand your parents' point of view. And and, Roy says, "Don't worry, Pam, it still comes on, so you can watch it now." Uh, yeah, so I remember that. That was, but I had no idea what was happening. I was laughing, but not laughing, but not understanding why I was laughing, because I was an innocent kid, which all kids should be innocent for as long as possible. And so you see how I'm kind of working that retroapicularis fat pad right there. And I'm just erasing but leaving a space between, and what that does, it helps to create that texture that you don't want to elude you. I did miss this. I had no refill for about 2 weeks, and now I just love it. I love it. I love it. And so Pam says yes, she does. Yeah, I really enjoyed that show when I was a kid. You know, John Ritter with his pratfalls were just incredible. And who doesn't like Janet and Chrissy, and then all the other actresses that were in Chrissy's place. So that was great. And Mr. Air Todd, all the way from San Diego. How are you, sir? I'm so glad you're here. And Pam says they're not anymore. The cell phone, yes, the cell phone does. That is so sad because you know, with the cell phone and everything, you really want them. It's horrible. You want kids to stay as innocent as long as possible. And I raised stepchildren. You know, I don't call them stepchildren. They were my kids, and I tried to keep them, and also their mom tried to keep them as innocent as possible, you know, because that's so important. It really is, to keep kids. But yeah, and even when we did watch Three's Company, I had no idea what they were talking about. When I got older, I'm like, oh my God, what are they saying? What were they implying? you know, like Larry, the neighbor, he was like a sex crazed guy. That's all he thought about. And who can forget Mr. Furley, huh? He was fantastic. So you see how I'm kind of starting to work on texture now. Now watch what I'm going to be doing in her lower eyelid, which is interesting. So her lower eyelid is not just one value. So at first you get the line, then you get the value, and then after the value, then you get the values in the value. So it's slightly darker towards the bottom, slightly darker here, and then darker on the edge. 1 second rule. So you look for a second, you look at the reference, and then you look at your painting. Turn the air off, turn the ink off, look at your reference, and then paint. So don't look at your reference while you're painting. So stop painting and look at your reference. And you'll get that cadence, and just give yourself a break, It'll come to you. Just keep it in mind. Keep hearing my voice saying, 1 second rule. Now it doesn't mean 1 second. It means that's the unit of time measurement that you want to have. So 1 to 1. It's a little darker in the corner there. So you see, as we get further along, the paintings do take a while, but there's a real reason for it. Because you wouldn't be able to get to this little detail if you were just, going in like gangbusters. Like cowboys with guns blaring. Oh, Michael says, imagine they did all in the Family now. Oh my God. I think the show would last about 34 minutes. It would be like 34 minutes, and that was the show. And, and Pam says, I love what you're doing. Thank you, Pam. I appreciate that. And Dwayne says he remembers all those shows and more. Never really watched much of them, as I was always busy with art and doing things. That's important. Yeah, I wasn't always going out as a kid. I was a sick kid, so I stayed home a lot. And so it was like just TV, like that was it. It was like I used to draw while watching TV. And thank you so much. Pam says that she looks great, and that's great. And I did have my time periods where I would be out a lot, but then I would get sick, and then I would stay in, and it was a good childhood, because I learned my sense of humor from like Gilligan's Island and Bewitched and all those really funny shows. Even though I didn't understand the humor, when I got older, I had all those jokes in my subconscious, in my memory bank. It was really cool. And I was like, wow, that's funny. Even though I didn't know it was funny, when I was a little kid. So that's drying. So I got to keep that in back of my head that that's drying. But there's this cast shadow coming down from the hair that goes along the retroorbicularis oculi fat here. And when you have a cast shadow, the cast shadow will follow the shape of whatever is whatever the shape of that cast, it will follow that shape, wrap around it as if it was a blanket. And I'm just going to pump that trigger and make sure I don't get too saturated with the ink. If it's too wet, it'll start to spider. And you see now I move it over just a tad. Now you can see, and when I darken her hair, we're going to see that cast shadow. So the hair is going to be darker, and then we're going to see the cast shadow right underneath. Perhaps I can make this a little bit lighter. There we go. Okay. And oh, what was my trouble? I had like intestinal stuff, you know, having to do with my intestines and all that. And something I dealt with my whole life from when I was little. And you know, it's funny when you are born with something and you live with it. It's not like when I hear people when they have like, you know, they call it, they have diarrhea or stuff, and you know, but when you live with something like that, you just live with it. But there are people who are like, oh my god, I got irritable bowel syndrome. Well, I have something like that my whole life, so you know, it's something that I just live with. I don't know life without it, so it's interesting how when you're used to it, you know. And thank you for asking, Pam. And Dwayne says, he was such a hyper kid that his mom would drove him out and tell him not to come back till his son was, yes, that's exactly it a lot of times. Yes, when I was feeling good, my mom was like, you know, go play, you know, and but back then you could send your kid out. Now you can't do that, right? It's just a different world, and it's scary. And let's move on to the other eye. Even though the other eye, there's not much going on, we have to definitely give attention to it. We can't do one eye and not give attention to it. So this over here, I kind of lost the shape of the eye a little bit. Let's see if we can get that back. There we go. And we watch our angles, right? Angles, it's all about angles. Great. See, that kind of gives her kind of, her whatever kind of attitude that the model has here. Now, compression of values. See how far I have those values away from each other? I need to bring this light closer to the dark. And, you know, we fight our proclivity to want to define everything. So now I have to bring that in line to the reference, right? It's so important. And also the size of the shadow of the upper eyelid, right? We're going to make that a little bit bigger. And then here, this comes down, it's a larger shape. It's easy to make some of the shapes too small, you know, the minor shapes too small, and it's easy to make the white of the eyes too light because we think white of the eyes, it must be light, but in reality, a lot of times it's quite dark. And notice the detail that we can get with this Extreme Patriot arrow. It really is great. You know, when everything is humming, you know, you're not thinking about tip dry, you're not thinking about anything, you're just free to think about painting. And it's all connected, airbrush, oil paint, it's all connected. It's just a different language saying the same thing. And Dwayne says, Way different times now. Yeah, I wish it was. I wish the kids today could experience life like we did. Um, Maybe bad things were happening, but it doesn't seem like it's enough. And with this school shooting stuff, it just sickens me. You know, I think if I had a little one, I would homeschool them. You know, I would be too frightened to send them out there. Let's bring this down. Okay. And as you can see, little by little, we're getting there. And I'm just making sure that bringing those values in line. So if I zoom out, we can see, yes, there is as much detail, but it is a little bit darker, but the other values around it are dark as well. So we're not getting the detail that we're getting in the light area, and we have to keep that. Otherwise, there's going to be too much. Remember, there could never be as much detail in the shadow area as the light area. It's just physically impossible. If you ever see that in a photograph, it's because they're using reflectors and different light sources and everything. Oh, Patty, have a great night. Always a pleasure. I'm so glad you came out to hang out, and I hope you don't work very hard, okay? So take care. And Pam says she needs to listen to me and not hurry and relax and enjoy painting. Yeah. Go back to your first love with art. You know, why you did it. You know, why you did it in the first place, Pam. And just enjoy it and enjoy the process of it. And the more you do it, the better it's going to happen. The better your painting is going to happen. And so the main thing is just have fun. Buy new art supplies, right? But make sure you use them. Don't worry about using your oil paints or whatever you're using. Don't worry about using it. That's using your art supplies. That's your crown jewel. That's your badge of honor. What's the worst that happens? You get to buy new art supplies, and that makes me so sad when great people buy all these art supplies and don't use them. Use them. Just, you're putting in your hours, and every time you do, you just get better and better. Michael says, with the way you are of knowing the Academy of People, it is the way I am about knowing the parts on cars. Wow, Mike, exactly. We all bring something to the table, right? So Mike is really great with cars, and he probably knows, uh, you know, different cars and makes, and muscle cars, and the difference between, let's say, a Toyota Supra and, let's say, at the same time a Camaro, right, Mike? And that's what you bring to the table, and you could bring that to your painting, Mike. You know, and we need that. We need everybody, not just people who know about celebrities, people know about cars, people know about plants. It's all so important, and it kind of shares with everybody a whole different point of view that maybe we didn't look at before. So that's why it's so great that Mike is painting and using his expertise and his passions to the art. And that's so important. Great point right there. Very good. Now I'm going to work on her mouth a little bit. And so I'm going to come down. So I'm pretty happy with the way the eyes are so far. And we'll move her over. Okay, so the light's coming from above and also camera right. So that means whatever's below and to the left is going to be darker. So I'm just going to pump this trigger and just slightly make this area darker. Now there are some lighter areas, but I'm not going to erase now because you never erase on wet paper. But we have this little crease on her lip, and I'm going to increase my distance because this isn't a line, but it's a shadow shape. It's actually a thicker shape. So I'm going to pump this trigger, and I'm going to not get a line, but a shadow shape, which is different. And you see, you know, you want to definitely escape, you know, what your brain is telling you. Go ahead and put an outline on those lips, but that outline is not there. And so now you can see, by paying attention to what it is we're painting, we'll get a better representation, even though our brain is saying you need to outline this part, but you really don't, you know? And Michael says, definitely, so love what Michael said. And let's go ahead and work on the lower lip. And right here, I'm going to be about 1.5 inches. Now, why am I not closer? I'm painting detail. Why don't I go closer? As I go closer, it's going to get darker and a harder edge. So you want to be further away to get a softer edge. So that means you just have to have even better aim when you're going further away. And now the light's coming from above, so why is it darker on the top of the lip? Because it's being covered by the upper lip and the finger. And I'm just going to come up here. And notice it's like when I'm just slowly pumping that trigger, it's almost like I'm working in watercolor. And what a great way to warm up, right? You know, I have this detail mixture, I'm just warming up. I'm just enjoying the painting process, getting reacclimated with our model here. It's a little darker right here. If I want it more smoky, I go further away. See that? And then here, when I want a little more detail, I come closer and it gets darker. Now there is a light right in between there, and I'm going to get that, but I have to wait on that. You don't want to erase on wet. Erasing on wet paper is a kiss of death. So look at the control I'm getting, which is quite amazing. And this is a $149 airbrush. It's not a micron, and it's not a 0.15 or a 1.7, it's a 0.30. Now why is a 0.30 better? If you can get detail with 0.30, that means you're going to get less tip dry, you're going to get less clogging. So that's why I feel my airbrush is really good, because it's the best of both worlds. There we go. And very cool. And over here we have a little bit of darkness on this side of, again, the light is coming from above and to the right, so why is it on the right that we're getting shadow? Is because it's turning obliquely, it's turning away, so it's at an angle. So if it's hitting here at, like, let's say a 45-degree angle, it's going to be darker than here, which is going head to head with the light. There we go, so a little indication of the knuckle. And now it's a little bit, it's dry, so I'm going to take this, more aggressive, and right in here, it's just a little bit lighter. Right in there, let's see if I get that correct. Right in here, just a little bit lighter. And I'm just going to shade that down a little bit. The teeth are a little bit darker. Even though they're teeth and she has nice white teeth, but not in this photo. If I went ahead and did what I thought, like, okay, she's a model, she must have beautiful white teeth. She does, but not in this photo because of the shadows and the lighting. So really paint what you see and not what you think you see. Same thing, it's like a combination though. So you paint what you see, but also add what you know, which is anatomy and your knowledge of light and shade and the physical qualities of light. So now we'll zoom out. And so we worked on her lips a little bit more. We have more to go, but it's just kind of reacclimating ourselves to that, right? And oh, so Pam says that the lips are beautiful. Thank you. They're a lot of work, but they're fun to do. And Pam says she's trying to learn this shadow stuff and where the light goes. Yes, remember, Pam, that light moves in straight lines, and when something is not hitting it directly, it starts to go into shadow. So whatever is facing parallel to the light is going to get the most light, as well as whatever is closer. So as things turn away just slightly, like this finger is turning away, it's in shadow. Same thing, this is turning away, and in the center, that's where the most light is coming. So always remember that. So now what I'm going to do, and going with that idea of light, Pam, is that this is the light area, right? You have a light side and a dark side. So the light side is going to get more definition and more light, and the dark side is going to get more shadow or more absence of light because A, it has further to go, and also this is the shadow side, so the nose is kind of blocking a lot of that light from hitting her face, and also as the maxilla goes down, it starts turning away from a direct hit of light. And think of it like snow on the mountaintop, right? When we have snow on the mountaintop, wherever the snowstorm was facing, the wind, that gets the most snow, and also whatever is like not facing directly from the wind of the snow, that gets less snow. Still gets snow, but less. And as it turns further and further away from the way that the storm was going, it just gets less and less snow. So think of light in the same way. It gets less and less snow, and you get less and less light that's not facing the storm, or in the light's case, the light rays. Light rays will go in a straight line from whatever it is, whether it's the sun or a light, a lamp, a lightning bug. It's always going to work that way. So right now, I'm just pumping this trigger, and watch what I do, which is really cool. Is here we have this, and we definitely have to make it darker. But we're not just making it darker. We're going to do tiny little circles. I'm going to go a little circle while pumping that trigger, doing the 1 second rule. And I'm just going to create texture as I'm darkening, right? So I'm not just darkening, I'm creating texture. And also, I'm also going with the grain of the face, right? The skin. What's happening? What's being pulled? Right here is the orbicularis oris, and then we have the nasolabial fold here. And we're just going to really look at it and really paint that. But as we're doing it, we're not just painting it, we're getting the value, but we're sneaky. We're also getting texture as we're getting that value. So we're doing little tiny circles, and we're talking tiny little baby circles. I mean, really ridiculous. And stay there slightly longer if you see that she has like little imperfections in her skin, and that's what you want to do. The airbrush is an amazing tool. So there are so many advantages of the airbrush over things such as, working with a paintbrush or working with a pencil. Use those advantages, and that advantage is the ability. You don't need texture stencils. Do they make your life easier? Yes. But are you learning about skin textures? No. So try not to use texture stencils when you can not use them. And I'm not going to say that texture stencils are bad, they're not. But working and doing it by hand better, most definitely. And I'm just going to continue this, just continuing this texturization as I'm going. And there's just the slightest indication of the nasolabial fold here. We're talking super slight, right? And when I come back for my next layering, it's probably going to come back with a slightly darker mixture, and I'll build this up again. But you don't want it being smooth. Skin is not smooth. I don't care who you are, what age you are. Skin is not smooth. It has a texture, it's gnarly, and there's light bouncing all over it in different directions because it's not smooth. If we were made out of porcelain or we were made out of hard plastic, then there wouldn't be any textures, a lot like those filters, right? A lot of those filters, they're not real. And there's some texture here, just kind of pumping, and I'm pumping that trigger ever so light, So as I zoom out, we should see that this side is getting darker. Maybe not as quick as I want it to, but that's where patience comes in, right? Patience is key. So again, just pumping this trigger and getting texture as I'm darkening. And when I come in with the white pastel, you're going to see things really explode. It's just going to pop. All this hard work is really going to pay off. So right now it looks like I'm really not doing anything, but like I said, when we come in with that white pastel, all of this is really going to make a lot of sense. And still making sure I'm compressing those values. I don't want to let my subconscious get in the way, that there needs to be delineation between different shapes. Just continuing really, and also scanning the whole painting, right? And the reference, is this darker? How much darker is this side from this side? Also, what value is this? What can I compare it to elsewhere in the painting? And for instance, is this area as dark as the side of the nose? No. Is this area right here as dark as this transition tone? Yes. So we can definitely match this area with that transition tone, and that's how we get harmony, right? And so we're going to match this, bring this over, and now we're starting to get that look of her nose and everything. As you get further along the painting, you're going to start to see now you've done a lot, and now you can compare values and really get the relationships, the value relationships. And even here with this light in the bottom lip, it's much darker, the light, so I have to compress those values. Always have to compress those values. Right here in the lip, on the top of the bottom lip, there is a darker value. So you start noticing things as you keep moving around. The bottom part of the bottom lip, it's darker. And you ask yourself, is it as dark as this transition tone and over here? And I would say it is about the same value. And that's how you know how to get dark, But that's when going light and working from dark is that if you bring everything up together, you're going to see those relationships and you're going to have a stronger painting. And it's all down to, working the painting together and then looking at the value relationships and kind of gauging everything, and that's how you find, and that's how you get a painting that has that hyperrealism, because you're paying attention to all the relationships. It's really the relationships that are important, not all the pieces. How they relate to one another, how the puzzles fit, and that last piece is important because all the other pieces are contingent for that last piece to fit. Like the IKEA furniture we have to put together. Now I'm just moving around, pumping that trigger, and just continuing, because I have to build up the dark here in her face on the shadow side, right? And the light on the shadow side, is it as light as this side? No way, it's much darker. What value would I compare it to? Probably this right here, where the zygomatic bone starts turning down. So I'm going to take this shadow color here, and that's going to be my light over here. So you see how that works. And otherwise, you would not know how dark you need to go on the dark side and how light is your lightest light on the dark side. It's not quite light, it's not much light at all, but we only know that by comparing it to different areas, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to compare and contrast and get those relationships. And it'll come together, you just have to be patient and don't try and build Rome in a day, right? I'm not trying to resolve this side of the face. I'm just trying to get the value relationships is all. And just continue fighting, right? Just continue fighting, moving around. But right now I'm pretty set on getting the relationship from this side onto that side. Otherwise it won't work. She'll look flat. But now that we're getting the values and the relationships, things are really starting to ramp up. And we're pumping that trigger, and we're making sure we're compressing the values, right? We don't want the values too close to one another, because then it's going to look like a cartoon and not a painting. And cartoons are great if that's what you're after, but if you're not after it, then you have to pay attention to all these relationships. Same thing here, this dark underneath her neck right here, her neck area, it's much darker, and we say, how dark is that neck? I would say it's the same value as the underplane of her eye. So yeah, even dark as this here, so that tells me exactly if it's out of whack, and I could go ahead and bring that value down. Now it's starting to fit, and then same thing. Is it as this side as dark? Well, in the shadow area here, it is. And then we come up here and kind of make everything turn, even though it's just a little piece of her neck showing. And now I can see the angle's a little off. And there's quite a number of things off here now that I notice it. And those are really cool things when they happen. And is this wet? I don't think so. So I'm going to, while I'm here, I'm going to see that right about here is where we see the neck, and it goes a little bit past this knuckle here. So watch, and some things you have to live with. There's some things, if there was like, something with the, the shape of the eye or something was off, like you would pick your battles, and you might say, well, I'm just going to live with it for now and make sure I don't do that in the future. So now there's much more neck here, and I'm just going to bring back this shape here. And you can see that, it definitely works that I did that. And now we can work on this and kind of correct that. And so I'm happy with it. I'm happy I caught it because it was something that it's in the shadow area, so making that change, nobody would have noticed, but I would have noticed. And those are things that when you can fix it, fix it. And so that changes a lot, right? So we're just going to let that kind of sit for a moment, and then we'll move over here. And it's interesting because when you do work, you may find that there are some things you need to change. And these are things I can change, so no worries. But pick your battles. You know, if it was something really huge, I would just say, nope, I'm not going to go there. There's a negative shape here. There we go. See this negative hair shape here? And that works. And you see how it was much more complexity going on here, that once I fixed this, it kind of caused like a chain reaction. And that's how you find balance in the work too, by looking around and trying to get the overall ensemble, and that really helps a lot. So definitely good, but pick your battles. Is it something that people are going to notice? You know, do you really need to make all the changes? Sometimes it's good just to chill and say, okay, lesson learned. I'll be more careful next time. But here we can definitely fix this by softening this edge here. But that was interesting how I didn't catch it. We're humans, that's why we have erasers on pencils. So don't think just because I have all this experience I don't make mistakes. I make mistakes in painting all the time and in life. Speaking of that, I just always want to thank God for this live stream and having the ability to bring this, and all the great people are here. I just want to thank God for that, and just want to say thank you for everyone coming and hanging out during this live stream and giving great comments. I look forward to you guys all the time. So yeah, so it's just, we're all on the same road, right? Some people are further up the road, some people are further back from the road. It doesn't matter. It just matters that you're on the road, and you're just going forward. Just move forward, right? That's all you need to do. Just move forward and enjoy the process, because in reality it's all just a process anyway. It's not the destination. That's cool when it happens, but it happens. And there were times like when I would enter online shows and group shows in New York City, and I always aspired to get like the first prize. And when I won the first prize, and it was nice, it was like $1,500. You want to know something? It was really like, okay, it was like anticlimactic, because it's really, that's not what you're after. Because if you get there, it's going to be great, but it's not going to change anything. It's going to be great, and then during that day and at the reward ceremony, it's fantastic, but then it's like, okay, back to work. So just enjoy the process of where you are. Ask questions. I'm always more than happy to answer any questions you have about airbrush or anatomy. You guys have my email, so please let me know. I'm more than happy to help, definitely. Compressing the values, even though it's lighter here, and I want to delineate her nostril here, the values are much more compressed. I see a lot less detail here, so I want to make sure. But I am seeing a little darker here on the bottom part of the alar cartilage of the nose. so you see there's more definition here with the alar cartilage. And this comes more straight down and then over. All these little things that you notice in the later part of the paintings will really come far, because those little tiny adjustments are, you know, where the magic of the likeness are. And you see how just little by little we'll get there. Now there is some skin texture in the light area, but on the light side, but there's not much room for it because it's kind of blown out, the details. So light is funny. Too much light will blow out the details. Too little light will obscure the details. It's only when things are just right do you get all the details in the light. And like I said, looks like I'm not doing anything. I've been spraying for an hour and you're like, wow, nothing's happening. Really, there's a lot happening, but it's very subtle, and it has to do with relationships and bringing everything Mike says, what's the yellow light mean? And he says, slow down, look at what you're doing. It's true, right? You know, it's always true just to slow down, as you said, as Jim from Taxi says, you know, what's a yellow light mean? Always slow down is so true, Mike. Great advice. Great advice. There we go. And just continuing working on different areas and making sure I don't go too far, right? But you would think that this part underneath her eye, which is the retroorbicularis, no, this is the orbicularis oris. Nope, it's the eye. So here's the orbicularis oris, here's the orbicularis oculi, and you see just a little bit right here, and this is the malar fat pad right here. So it looks like it should be lighter, and I want to lighten it, but it is dark in my reference. So I am going, and this is part of the character. This is part of, you know, these lines in her face is really what drew me to it. So why try and make it better? There's no better. It's just staying true to what inspired me in the first place, right? And that's important. Stay true to that. I want to show you what's capable with this airbrush for $149. Look at that line I just did right there. See that? How you can do lines like that? Now, to put it in context, here's a nickel. So look how small that line is. And that's the beauty of the inks, of the so are my inks you substitute for color? No, but it's going to teach you how to get the kind of detail and the kind of control that you really need to work in color. And that's what the inks and the airbrush really gives you, because the inks are the perfect viscosity. Anything thicker and you're going to have a problem. So working with the inks, then when you go into working with Createx or Golden, then you're like, oh, I know this is too thick. It doesn't feel like the inks. And that will really dispel a lot of the conjecture going on and all these different explanations of the correct thickness for paint. And the inks are really going to help that. So that is really important. And so as I zoom out right now, you can see that, there's a lot more texture and everything. Now let's not forget the forehead, right? The forehead. So in my group class for my students, because I also have, the mentorship program, you get 1 2 hour one-on-one class, and then you could come to the live stream, and then on Friday nights, you get a group class where we discuss anatomy. In Friday night's group class last week, we discussed that even though a forehead is fairly simple, there's a lot going on, right? So, like right here, there is there's a muscle, right? Two muscles called the supercilii, right here, and that supercilii muscle is kind of when someone frowns, they kind of get these little wrinkles here. Those are two muscles that come over here. Then there's a muscle in the center called the procerus, and that's what causes the wrinkles. And from the center is the procerus, right? So she's making an expression. So if I'm looking for those muscles, I can find them a lot quicker if I'm just painting what I'm seeing, right? And there's not only muscles that we are also dealing with, but also the skeletal structure of the skull. And the skull has what is called protuberances, which is a ridge or kind of an eminence over the eyes where it comes further out over the eye sockets, and then on top of the head where we can't see because her hair is covering it, there's a circular protuberance here and a circular protuberance here. And this is all on the frontal bone, right? So, but on the frontal bone also is the frontalis muscles, which are two muscles on the right and left side of that forehead. You can look for them, but a lot of times, you may not see it because of hair and the lighting situation. So you see some of it. I see some of the corrugated supercilii muscle coming over here, right? I see some of that, which is good. Dwayne, thank you so much for the super chat, my friend. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the support, and it really means the world to me, and it helps so much, and it encourages me. And always thank you so much for your amazing feedback and comments and your knowledge. So thank you so much for that, sir. Oh, Pam is saying good night. Pam, have a great night. Getting up at 5:30. Thank you so much for spending time with me tonight. I hope you have a great day at work tomorrow. Don't work too hard. And it's one day closer to Friday, right? So that's good. Once again, thank you, Dwayne, for that. I really appreciate it so much. And so we're going back to our forehead, and we do have the frontalis muscle, but what I can see is really interesting because when I'm looking for these eminences, so I'm going to show you all with this note, and I'm going to use this right here. Oh, thanks, Dwayne. I appreciate that so much. It's so cool that you come to hang out, and it's great talking with you and everybody. So thank you. So here's our forehead, right? This is our standard forehead, and here's our eye sockets, right? And so we have that, and I'm going to darken this, so maybe so we have that like that. So we have this eminence right here, which is comes out further over each eye socket. And then we have a circular motion here. This is the bone. Kind of comes like this, right? So with this eminence coming, this eminence right in here, it's going to be slightly darker because this is coming out further, hitting more light. This is coming out further, getting more light. This eminence is coming out, getting more light. And then you have the glabella, and this is getting less light because this is where it goes in, right? It sort of goes in, and that's where you get the profile of that. So with that knowledge, right, I could look at her, and look for it, and I will find it. It's very slight, but there's that darkness that's in between all of those protuberances on her forehead. Even though I don't see it so readily, if I'm looking for it, I'm going to find it. And I did find it. And that is so cool. So, with the knowledge of anatomy, it's going to give your. There's realism, right? And there's photorealism, but this is something deeper. This is something where, the work has more life to it. It has more knowledge of my subject, right? And my subject is the human the human anatomy, right? So even though it's super slight, I'm actually looking for it, and I do find it, and it would be really slight. You probably would not see it if you're not looking for it. But the thing is that it's there, and to me, that's the exciting part, right? Of finding things that are kind of hidden, right? Beethoven said that work so hard on your craft that you force your art to reveal their secrets, and that's what the whole thing of doing it, not just painting but also learning about what your subject is. Excuse me. And that's basically how we take it to that next level. Right over here, it's slightly lighter. I darken here, so I'm not going to worry about working on white. It's quite dry here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lighten this area. This right here is where the zygomatic bone kind of connects to the temporal bone right here, right? It comes down, and that's lighter. So it's coming out, right? It's a zygomatic bone. It's coming out. And that's why it's getting more light. If it gets more light, it's going to have more white. So whatever is facing the light more directly, but as you are looking for that zygomatic bone, you find it and you say, okay, that's there. So it's coming out further, and we need to have more light on there. Same thing here. As we are looking at the eye socket, at the lower eyelid and upper eyelid in the eye, it's a round spherical shape going down like that, right? And so what we'll do is we'll just kind of indicate that kind of turning of the form. And as we do that, I may be too far away, in my dynamic range, so I'll revisit it and see if I need to darken it. But at least I'm addressing that, right? And addressing these shape changes and angle changes, and as something makes a real shift from, let's say, going down to going up, there's going to be a contrast that's pretty high over here. And those are the things that we look at, and that's what's going to give our work that power. Michael says you can name all the muscles and bones in front of the head. How about the back of the head where it looks like tree sausage length on the head? What is that called? Yes, so very interesting. So right back there is where now that is where your trapezius muscles actually connect to the base of the skull, and it kind of comes down from there, right? And when we go back, there's like a buildup when we move our head back, and we have those kind of bunching up. And then we also have fat there, right? But a lot of that has to do with that shape. Now I'm talking about not where the actual skull is. That has to do with our skull shapes, right, Mike? Very astute about that. So very cool. So our trapezius are hitting from our back. They go all the way from the back. They go down to, they attach to the clavicle and the acromion process in the scapula, and then it goes all the way down at trapezius to the small of your back. It's these really huge muscle goes down to the small of your back. Very interesting. Hey, what's up there, Mr. Brad? How are you? All the way from Manitoba, Canada. And Dwayne says that's where the artist covers them with hair. Yes, definitely. That was kind of. Now it's interesting. It could be also the skeletal shape too on back of the head. And I really love that discussion. That's great. Let's see if we could look at this real quick, if you guys don't mind. I have a really great image of her. Let's see, where is she? So I go to PC and I'm going to be right with you. And I have my anatomy file here. Okay. And let's move this picture over and we'll take a look at what we have. Let's see, can I do this? Oh, I'll just hit open. Okay, so here we go. That's the wrong picture. So we'll delete this. We can use that later. So let's put that in the back burner. And let's see if I can go get that picture again. The right picture. Seagate anatomy. Okay, so this is the muscle really that we're talking about that might be causing that. We'll drag this over here like this. Okay, so it's kind of a weird anatomical form, but you definitely can see it's this muscle and it kind of hits the base of the skull that might be causing that kind of bunching up. Very interesting. This is the sternocleidomastoid, which is coming from behind the ear, coming down, and right here on the base of the skull, that is definitely the trapezius. Those are the two muscles that really give us the profile of the person when you're looking straight. It's either you're going to see in the profile either the sternocleidomastoid or the trapezius. Okay, and we'll turn that off. So great question, and I'm going to see if I can find one from the back. So let's see. Oh, here's somebody. This is the back of. Let's take a look at this. So basically, here's where your trapezius really connects. So what this is definitely these lumps here. I think that has to do with the actual skeletal shape of the bones, right? So that's very interesting. So very, very interesting stuff. I'm actually going to go deeper into that. So thank you for sharing that with me. So I'm going to go deeper, and next week I'll go over the findings of what exactly are those lumps, right, on back of the skull. It's really cool. And so very cool. So let's continue working on. So we did the forehead, and we kind of, it's very super subtle, and worked on that. There's some shadow, cast shadow of the hair as we come down here like this. I love all your feedback and all your questions and your experiences. That's what makes this live stream so special. Anyone can come up here and just give information, but when we have this feedback and back and forth and learning and just having good camaraderie, that's priceless. That's so much better than just creating a video. I'm so happy that years ago I decided to do live streams. Makes a big difference in getting to know people and being inspired. Okay, so now let's work on this area. You can see the trapezius muscle coming down, and let's see if we could just kind of deal with this a little bit. Let's erase this area first. There's some pencil lines. Notice that my pencil lines, there's no pencil lines in my work, which is great because I transfer with a pencil, a number F pencil. and that's how I'm able to erase as I go, and at the end of the painting there's not any hint of ever being a pencil. Just looks like it was just airbrushed in ink, just one time. John Auguste Dominique Angot, a great French 19th century neoclassical painter, said, paint the ensemble. Make sure you, you know, compare everything so when it's done it looks like it was done in one breath. That's what Angot said. And I really adhere to that philosophy of making it harmonious, as if it's one organism, and she is one organism. She's not a series of parts, she's a person, and that's so important. And Mike says he just thought it was funny when the guy at work called them sausage link, and how some people do not have that many. That is true. That is hilarious. Oh my goodness. And so I'm just doing some nice, enjoying some nice freehand work here. And now I'm just looking at some of these value patterns here. Then we have a dark edge right here, and I'm just going to hit that. So right when it comes to right about here, we have a pretty strong turn here, where the trapezius actually starts to connect with the clavicle. Just pumping that trigger ever so slightly. Even though this is a very minor spot, you know, we don't want to ignore it, right? So I'm just pumping that trigger. Even though it's very light, I'm trying to get skin texture here, which is so important, you know. Freehand is, Dwayne says, freehand is his favorite. That and hand stencils. So true, right? It's where we really get to enjoy the airbrush, right, Dwayne? And we have some pencil lines, but we're going to save that. We're going to get rid of that. So, but let's go ahead and get our texture here. Pumping that trigger. Sometimes the space is more important than where you actually paint. So manage your space. Okay. And we have this errant hair coming down, like so. And there's a job here for the paintbrush pretty soon. There is a clavicle coming here, right? And so we're going, even though the photograph is not giving us that, I'm going to make that clavicle kind of turn, right? So I don't see it in the photo, but I'm putting it there because I know there's a clavicle there, right? And there's enough clues to tell me where that clavicle is. So I'm actually doing something that's not there. Not there in the photo, but I believe it's there in this young lady, right? So, next level stuff. You know, study of anatomy. You know, with my students, we study anatomy every week. And we go over the same areas, not every week, but we'll go over the importance of the sternocleidomastoid, the importance of the nasolabial fold. Why do we see it? Next week, this week, we're going to be doing the maxilla. What is the maxilla? Why is it so important, and why do you need to know where it is, and why you need to know what muscles and what bones connect to that maxilla? There's a left and right maxilla, and it has nothing to do with Godzilla, so that's important too. But like painting the hair, right? You paint the hair throughout the whole painting. Same thing with anatomy. It's cumulative, right? So with my students, I go over the anatomy over and over again. We study it. We see how it is in the human form, and we look for it. Give tests like, can you tell me, where that frontalis muscle is, right? Where's the frontal bone? Where's the temporal? All these, the occipital bone in the skull. It's just these bones, man, these big bones. And we have to know their names. Just like anything else, when you know the names of somebody and where they're from, you know them a little bit more. And that's what I like to do. I like to know my friends a little bit more, a little more profoundly. And so, and I love Angra, right? Angra's like my hero. He's like my mentor from the past. And he said one thing I didn't quite agree with, but that's just me. You're not going to agree with everything. And the thing is that he said that muscles and bones, they're good friends, but he doesn't know their names. But me, I want to be good friends with anatomy and the muscles and bones and the fat compartments, but I want to know their names too. I even want to know more about them because that's what I'm painting and drawing. I need to know more about them, right? Oh, look at that. Dwayne studies at the beach in the summertime. That's what you call very important lab work, right, Dwayne? That's, you're just doing lab work. That's all it is. Research. That's too funny. Nothing wrong with doing research, right? That's all for the sake of art. Too funny. There's a compression of values here, but I'm looking at the cast shadow of her finger, right? See this cast shadow right here? There's a cast shadow of that finger. Now, I don't know if I'm too dark or too light, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare this and say, how dark is it? Is it as dark as the side plane of here? Well, down here it is. So I'm going to take this value and put it here. And that's going to help me gauge just how dark to make the cast shadow of her finger onto her face. And then, you work on the edges. How far out does it go? That sort of thing. You have the zygomatic bone come down here. And then right here we're going to erase, but we can't because it's too wet. So we're going to keep that in back of our mind, right? It's very important to keep that in back of my mind. But notice as we're working, we're really getting a watercolor feel. Like it's very fluid. Things kind of move into one in a very fluid, blended way. And that's what you get when you build it, And Dwayne says, heck yes, where I get ideas for most of my female fantasy work. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. So that's one of the fringe benefits, right, of being a painter. Hey, some jobs get other fringe benefits. That's a fringe benefit of an artist. You're just doing research, right? That's all you're doing. It's a little too dark here. And so I'll show you exactly what I mean. So, we'll see when something's out of whack, right? And this is definitely out of whack. So I'm going to take my mono and I'm just going to erase right on that and kind of bring that in line. And that's important, to get rid of anything that's out of line, out of character with the rest of that particular ensemble of that lip there. And you can see that dark is a little too dark. And that's what we're doing, just moving around and fixing things and getting the relationships and everything. Dwayne says, plus the last week he's been doing a mural right across the street from the most popular college beach in the area. Very distracting. Yes, keep your eyes on the artwork. It's impossible, I know. Not easy. So, doing a mural, are you getting a lot of people coming up to you and asking questions about your art? I'm sure you are. That must be great. I would love to do a public space like that to really see what the public, thinks of the work and get their feedback. So that must be a lot of fun. I never did a mural, believe it or not. Never. Perhaps one day. Maybe next to a college beach. Oh my God, you guys are funny. And going back to kind of making things fall in line, right? And then the dark of her finger, it's a little darker. So I'm just going to darken this edge here of the finger. A lot of slight changes makes huge differences when you put them all together. So why go ahead and get this exact value? Because look how I can do that wrinkle. Just like so. It's just so cool, with this airbrush, what you can do when it's just humming along. Too many, right? I mean, it can get in the way, but it also is really good to get the feedback. We're all these solitary creatures, us painters, and it's nice to kind of have some feedback, right? A little bit. Now, there's a slight light that's on the bottom and up on top. And I'm just going to get that into my mind and come back to it because it's wet and that would be bad. But I'm going to continue working on this knuckle here. And the back of her finger. Remember, her finger, her index finger, is being affected by the light the same as her eye is. So it still needs attention, right? Needs attention as to what's happening with this form, which is her hand and then her finger and then her fingernail. How is that being affected by the light? And this is when we actually really get, really nice volume. Now I can lighten that up and darken this up a little bit. That's something I definitely should do. And this finger is lighter, but still not by much. So I'm going to darken this finger here. And then try and look for the shape of that knuckle. And it looks like, a little blotchy, but we haven't come in and actually done some erasing and everything. So it's where it should be. And you have to think where the painting's going, not the way it looks right now. And always keep that in mind. Where am I going with this? Why am I doing this? What's the next step? Is this step crucial to get to where you are? Most definitely. And you see where it's like really harder edge at the knuckle? I'm closer. And where we get a slightly softer edge, where we see the metacarpals, right? The metacarpals are the bones of the fingers that are underneath the surface. You don't see them. They're the metacarpals. And these are the carpals, and these are the metacarpals. I believe. It might be the other way around, but I'm pretty sure. I think it's the other way around. I'll have to look at that. So, definitely look that up. Oh, Dwayne says a very laid back area with too many hippies. And Brad asked if that's in San Diego. And so, yeah, San Luis Obispo. Go Banana Slug. No, that's the Mustangs, not the Banana Slugs. So you all excited that we're going to be doing a color portrait next in Airbrush? Okay, there's a slight cast shadow right here of that finger against her teeth. So let's look at that. So if we're painting like gangbusters and trying to get it looking, if we're doing this need for speed, then you know what? We're not going to see these subtle changes. You just won't. Okay, so right here we have, it goes up quite dramatically, right up there like that. See how the lips go up? What's great about using this detail mixture that is even further diluted, it keeps us from going too dark. So even if it appears to be dark, we're really not dark at all. But you see the cast shadow? We have a serious cast shadow of that finger right on her lip there. Now remember, her lip is pushed forward, right? So why aren't we seeing the cast shadow underneath her nose? Is because that finger is right up against her lip, and so it's blocking the light. The finger is further away from above the lip and under the nose. So that's why that's happening. This area is dry, so I did go a little too overzealous over here and over here as well. I can kind of calm things down. And let's see, Michael says it's going to be nice to see that. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate that. And Brad says he drove down the highway, the Coast Highway, once from Arcata to San Diego. Very cool. Oh, the two meet in San Luis Obispo. That's great. And Brad says Pacific Coast Highway, whatever that one is. So that's cool. So yeah, beautiful country you live over there. Beautiful part of the country there, Mr. Dwayne. And you see these little subtleties here that when you get them and you do a lot of them, it's really going to mean a lot to where we need to be. A little bit lighter right here, and then it gets a little darker right here. The further away, the more dramatically slow the shading will be. You know, I build it up slowly. And you know, you'll see if the teeth are too light, and we just have to bring them in the value correct, right? There'll be times when you want to make some changes and kind of make it lighter for pictorial purposes. That's okay, as long as you know you're making that change as a conscious choice. I'm going to put in some of the little ridges here in her teeth, in her lips. Now, doing this kind of tight detail is not always the best. It depends on the painting. Sometimes you want to maybe generalize it, right? So tight detail does not mean better. It's just a different approach than, let's say, doing just a couple of values and getting those lips to, look the same, but only from far away. It depends on what you're after. There's no right or wrong there. And as you can see, I'm just getting some of the little texture there. I'm just pumping that trigger. I'm just getting the real subtlety, right? There's a lot of subtlety going on there. And it's our job to achieve that, right? So a lot of subtlety. And also, look at the grain of the lips, right? Of how they're going. And as you see, we zoom out and, it's just a little bit different, but you can see there's a little bit of a stronger expression. Now looking at this is way too dark, right? I don't like it. It brings it out too far. So I'm just going to, I think that's dry, but I'm going to wait a moment and I'm going to calm that down because that little change I made is a little too far. So I'm going to fix that. So those are things that you need to always be assessing in what you did and can I fix it, right? So let's speed that up by drying, put some air on that. And I'm just going to ever so lightly calm down this dark here. Okay, and now I'll just sort of go over that. And that's a work in progress, so I'm going to work on that. I may come in with, I think when I went with the paintbrush, so I'm going to just darken around it, kind of bring that together a little bit. Kind of lower that contrast there. See how I kind of lowered that contrast a little bit? So you can see what I have to do is I'm going to come in and get that negative space. So see right here, there's this little thing here. So I'm going to actually get this, and we all have those paint cups and we have a lot of lids. So I'm going to take some of my detail mixture, put it in there, and I'm going to come in with my paintbrush. And we're going to make this happen, my friends. Now, you always want to release the excess water, right? So you're just going to rub the excess water, get the excess water off of your brush. And you're doing a kind of dry brush technique. And that's pretty much how we'll regulate this. And we'll let it dry, and then we'll go back over it again. And you see how, you know, you can fix it. There are some things that you want to address really, like if it's looking really crazy, you really can't go on having it looking crazy like this. So that's why I kind of addressed it right away. And we'll go ahead and hit this dark right here in the corner. Kind of balance out this dark so it doesn't look like really crazy. Okay, we'll move over here. Oh, cool. So we have some good discussion here. Michael says he thinks that his Badger Renegade needs a good cleaning. He's going to have to give it some alcohol for it. And that's cool. And he says it doesn't spray as it used to. And Dwayne says, oh, Dwayne's talking about Monterey and stuff like that. What's really interesting is definitely there are some airbrushes that, you know, no matter how you baby them, there's going to come time where you're just going to have to give them a good overhaul and maybe check that nozzle and everything like that. So, yeah, so definitely check that. If you have any problems with the Badger, anything weird going on, let me know and maybe I could give you some direction as to get it back into shape. That's my pleasure. There we go. Okay, feeling better, but I'm just going to darken this one spot right there. So now if I zoom out, am I happier? Let's see. Yes, happier, but not 100% happy just yet. So what I want to do is I want to calm down this hard edge here. So I'm just going to darken this tooth a little bit. Bring that tooth back. There we go. And over here too. I want to bring this tooth back a little bit. So I'm going to darken. And kind of get rid of, see how now I calm down that contrast that was there. It just wasn't acceptable for me. I didn't like it. You know, when you're painting a beautiful woman, you don't want to make her look less beautiful than she is. That's not good. So one day when I get to paint a first lady or something like that, I'll be able to make her look amazing, as they would be, whatever a first lady it is, or maybe a queen or a princess or something like that. So it's good, you know, always, when you're praying for rain, always go ahead and, you know, plant your seeds. So figure out, you know, how you're going to make a really good portrait. If this was a commission, what would you do to make it even more beautiful? So you don't want to make her look not as beautiful as she is. You want to take her to that next level, right? That's what she deserves. Okay, so that's much better. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to zoom in on her lips, go back to the airbrush of course, and there's some depth here, so it's a little bit darker right in the center of her lip here. It's a slight little variation, but it's just a little darker. It's because of the way her lip is being kind of pushed around. So, and really working on that lip there. And it's important, you know. Sometimes, you know, you will need to work a little harder in certain areas, and that's what we had to do just now. And so I'm really happy with it. And let me just dust this so there's not too much contrast in the lip, but just enough contrast, and that's important. And Mr. Todd says, sorry I have no single in the garage. Take care, Todd. Always a pleasure. So good to see you. And so Dwayne says it's called different things in different areas. If you drove from Monterey down to Big Sur, you come out in Morro Bay. That's a photo in your picture. How cool is that? That's very interesting. Dwayne says, through the nozzle in 90. Oh, look at that. Dwayne gives great advice on the nozzle. 91% alcohol, and use its sharpened bamboo skewer to clean them out. Very cool. Oh, it used to be your number one gun, so definitely. Let me know if you're having any trouble. Dwayne's giving great advice, but if you do that, you have trouble, you email me, and we'll see if we can get that going for you. You know, I have a good checklist on, you know, if you're still having trouble, you know, after Dwayne's really good advice. Always go for the low-hanging fruit first, right? You know, like let's say I'm having trouble with the airbrush. First thing I do, tip dry. Very easy to do. Second thing I do is I will loosen the chucking nut and then just twirl the needle and then push it out just a little bit. There might be some dry paint or dry ink that's kind of sticking, and then put that back and see if those two things work. Usually a good amount of time it's that. Sometimes when you're pressing down on an airbrush and ink comes out, right, or paint comes out, that means there's something in the nozzle. And what Dwayne was saying was great, because then you can check that nozzle, see if there's any paint in there. You know, putting that alcohol through it is really key. It's so important to clean it out. And so do that, and that would be your low-hanging fruit, and check the nozzle. If that continues, you check your needle. If you have an auxiliary needle, put that in, see if that solves the problem. And then if the new needle isn't solving the problem, that's why you always have to have a spare needle on hand, because you really don't know whether it's the needle that goes, right? So, and then you do that and it's all fixed, and it was either, so first check the dirty needle, see if that, the nozzle, see if that fixes it, then check the needle, put a new needle in, see if that fixes it. And if those things, usually I would say 99.9% of the time it's one of those things. So that's good. Unless you dropped it, it's an easy fix. You just got to give it a good cleaning, and that should really do the trick. And Dwayne says, don't use the needles to do it, or any metal, because you'll jack up the nozzle. So true, because the needle is a lot stronger than the brass of the nozzle. So the nozzle will win. The needle will win and damage that nozzle. So very good point. So guys, we are at 11:29, and I always stay until 11:30. So we're in our final minute. I just want to thank everybody. Dwayne, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate your support, my friend. So cool. And thank you everybody for coming and hanging out. I really appreciate all the great comments from Mike and Brad and Dwayne and Todd and Colette and Pam. We had some great people tonight. Honey and Patty and Mr. Roy. Thank you so much for hanging out. And once again, thanks for the great comments from Mr. Mike and Mr. Dwayne and everybody. You guys make my Wednesdays. Thanks, Pam, always. You guys make my Wednesdays, and I look forward to so much. And as I grow as an artist, I hope you guys grow with me. And that's what we'll do. We'll just grow as artists together, meet on Wednesday nights, and have great conversation and inspire one another. That's what this whole thing is about. Not about how many people are here. It's who is supposed to be here is going to be here, and that's really important. So it's 11:30, my friends. Have a great night. Always a pleasure. You are all the best of the best. Don't let anyone ever tell you differently. Thanks, Mike, for that. I appreciate that. Thanks, Dwayne and Brad, and for the wonderful comments on the work. You guys are amazing. You really are.